I spent my entire career getting people to stare at a screen, until the day that very screen blocked me from seeing my soul. And then I died. Have you ever wondered if God looked at the phone you hold every day, what would he see? My name is Emily Carter. I'm 38 years old, a digital advertising specialist in Seattle. I work with algorithms, keywords, and trends. I know exactly what makes you pause while scrolling past hundreds of videos. I don't just sell products. I sell your attention. Every click is money. Every second you stay is a chance to manipulate your emotions. It sounds dark, doesn't it? But in my world, that's success. Each morning, I woke up with my phone in hand. Each meal, I scrolled while chewing. Each night, I lay beside my husband, but my mind drifted in a sea of data that never stopped. I called it a connection. But the more connected I became, the more hollow I felt. I knew the names of every CEO in Silicon Valley, but I couldn't remember the last time I watched my son play ball. I was invited to speak at major conferences, followed by hundreds of thousands of people, yet no one knew I had been on sleeping pills for 3 years straight. One night, I looked in the mirror. The glow of the screen lit up my cheek like a synthetic moon, pretty but cold. I realized I had been living in a world filled with light, yet utterly silent. Bright but not warm. Fast but not real. Deep, but no one truly touched each other. I used to call that progress. Now I call it digital loneliness. I was alive, but was I living? Or was I just a soul being dragged through feeds, alerts, taps, and an endless hunger for dopamine that never satisfied? I once believed I was the one controlling technology, but in truth, it had become my god. There was no altar, just Wi-Fi, no rituals, just notifications, no offerings, just my time and presence, sacrificed day after day, with no one demanding it but me. And then one rainy afternoon on my way home, glancing at a text message on my phone, I didn't see the truck speeding through the intersection. 1 second, one impact, then silence. How long does it take to die? For me, it took exactly 13 minutes and 42 seconds to leave my body, enter a light that was no longer artificial, and face the very first question God asked me. Not, did you live a good life, but did you truly live? And if you think the accident was the most terrifying part, it wasn't. What I saw after I died shook me more than the sound of steel crashing into my body. You won't believe what comes next. I didn't hear a scream. I didn't hear sirens. There were no cries. Only a vast white silence, thick and breathless. I couldn't feel my body anymore. But I saw myself, lying there on the pavement, blood spreading like ink on a blank sheet. Everything unfolded like a slow-motion film. Police, bystanders, paramedics, and me, an empty version of myself watching, unable to scream. I didn't understand why I wasn't panicking. Maybe when the soul leaves the body, fear doesn't follow. The only thing I carried was awe. I saw my life clearly, not through an Instagram filter, not behind layers of self-assured makeup. Just a little girl chasing numbers, metrics, likes, while her heart quietly wilted in the background. Then something began to lift me. Not a hand, not wings, just a presence, soft like wind but steady like a mountain. I didn't resist. I couldn't. I was drawn toward a light, not blinding or brilliant, but real. A light with scent, emotion, and memory. It reminded me of moments when I was truly myself, holding my son without a phone in hand, laughing with my mother without recording it for a story, breathing deeply in the woods without thinking about unanswered emails. I fell into a place without gravity, without time, just pure being. No deadlines, no meetings, no business cards, contracts, or marketing campaigns. Just me bare, exposed, and a voice rising from within that didn't use words. You've been living someone else's life. When will you live your own? I wanted to answer, but here there were no words, only truth. And truth doesn't require explanation. I saw flashes, a fast-forward of every dinner I skipped with my son for another project, every time I dismissed my husband's feelings to handle a crisis, every morning I spent 2 hours online, yet gave God only 2 rushed words. Too busy. I never hated technology, but for the first time, I understood. Whatever consumes your attention daily is what you're worshiping, even if you call it by another name. And as that light opened a new doorway, I knew I was about to meet the one I had only known through books, quotes, and other people's words. But this time, I wasn't coming to learn more. I was coming to confront life itself. Real life. What happens next will stop you in your tracks. Because when I thought I was about to meet God and be comforted, He instead pointed at the thing I held every single day and asked, "Are you sure this is your friend or the thief of your soul?" I stepped into a space that defied words like heaven or dream. There were no walls, no ceiling, no directions, yet every step I took felt like I was walking deeper into my soul. There were no defined landscapes, but the light there knew me. It didn't ask for my name, didn't need a resume, and didn't check my online profile. It simply whispered, "I know you, even the parts you haven't dared to face." And then he appeared, not with a face like the paintings, but with a presence that melted every frozen part of me. I knew it was him without introduction. Like when you stand before the ocean, you don't need someone to say, "This is the sea." You just know, because your soul remembers. He looked at me, not with blame, not with sarcasm, but with a gaze that stripped away every layer I had worn. I didn't feel like Emily, the adult professional. I felt like a tired child trapped in a grown-up body, using screens and notifications and endless scrolling to escape emotions too heavy to name. He reached out his hand. No nail scars. Just light. A radiance so overwhelming I could hardly breathe. In that light, I saw my phone still glowing, with all the familiar apps I used daily. Social media, email, news, games. And then he asked me a question not with words, but with a resonance deep in my mind. "Is this your friend or your God?" I was stunned. No one had ever asked me that. No one dared to. Because if they had, I would have laughed and said, "It's just a tool." But in that moment I couldn't lie. Because the light wouldn't allow it. I saw that every time I prayed, with one eye on my notifications. Every moment, I watched spiritual videos but skipped the Bible because it was too long. Every post I shared about love, my son waited for me to close the book and play with him. God didn't accuse me, but he showed me, idols don't need to be made of gold. Anything that consumes your time, attention, and trust becomes an idol. I fell into a silence I'd never allowed myself to feel back on earth. No sound, yet truth roared. He said, "You're not controlled by technology. You just forgot to set a boundary. And when there are no boundaries, tools become chains." I saw myself wading through a violent river, not of water, but of data. And each piece of information pulled me further from my own heart, from God, from those I loved, from the meaning of being alive. And just as I was about to collapse under the weight of it all, he reached out again. But this time not with answers, with a choice. And what he offered me next didn't just change the rest of my life. It might just change the way you live yours starting tomorrow. He didn't pull me, but the light from him led me somewhere else. Not heaven, not hell, but a place in between. A space like a vast web, woven with millions of souls. Each soul looked like a faint silhouette, plugged into a glowing device. But the glow wasn't warm. It flickered like a dying flashlight. And inside every flicker, I saw a phone, a screen, a pair of earbuds, a keyboard, an unread notification. Then I realized with horror they weren't chained. They weren't tied down. They had chosen to sit there, chosen to plug in, and never leave. As if they believed, as long as they're connected, they still exist. I heard the whispers. Must stay updated. Must reply. Must know what's going on. Must post now. Must. Each whisper felt like a blade carving away at life. And they all shared one thing in common. Eyes open but blind. Smiling but numb. Touching but never truly present. God said nothing. But I understood. This was a vision of humanity. Not dead in body, but dying in spirit. Disconnected from themselves. From each other. From him. I saw myself among them. Sitting with my phone in hand, my chest tightening with every ignored post, pretending joy with every new alert. No one forced me to live like that. I chose it. But I chose it because I had forgotten what life felt like before all of this began. Then he whispered into my soul. They are full of data, but starving for spirit. They reach for screens every day, but not for each other. I saw families eating dinner without looking one another in the eye. Children are growing up watching their parents glued to their phones. Conversations filled with emojis, but empty of real emotion. Hearts misfiring from fake news, minds drained by online comparison, souls clouded from never having a moment of silence. He pointed to one trembling soul, a young woman clutching her phone like a charm against fear. The screen blinked with relentless light, but the light in her eyes was gone. And he said, "That is you when you forget the sound of my voice." I wanted to cry, but in that place, you don't need tears to feel the pain. I understood. Technology isn't the enemy, but without boundaries, it becomes a thief. A thief of time, attention, trust, presence, love, and the ability to feel God. And then he asked, if you were to return, would you spend the time you have left connecting with me, or would you keep plugging into a world that cannot feed your soul? I knew I would return, but not as the Emily I was before. Because after everything I had just seen, I only had one choice left. And that choice begins with one small act, one that you too can make today. I woke up to the sound of a ventilator, the cold light of the hospital ceiling, and a doctor's voice echoing as if from another world. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I was just quiet, a strange kind of quiet, not from shock, not from weakness, but because for the first time in years, my soul had gone still. No longer spinning in circles around data, deadlines, and push notifications. My husband held me tight, his tears dripping onto my hand. A nurse whispered, she's alive. It's a miracle. But I didn't feel like I had come back to life. I felt like I had been born again. A version of me no longer tethered to the self that was always staring at a screen, always analyzing others' behavior, but never once looking into her soul. 3 days later, when I was discharged, I went home with a long scar on my arm and a decision no one expected. I turned off my phone. Not put it on silent. Do not set it aside. I powered it off completely and placed it in a drawer like I was burying a mask I had worn too long. The next morning, for the first time in 13 years, I ate breakfast without opening an app. I looked at my son as he laughed with milk on his lips, and I saw the light in his eyes, a light I had forgotten in my search for brighter, artificial ones. I started again. One meal without a phone. One afternoon of instrumental music. One evening, I read the Bible instead of scrolling through motivational reels. Each small act felt like a golden thread weaving my soul back to itself. And to him. I didn't abandon technology. I simply returned it to its rightful place as a tool to serve life, not the center of it. I began checking in with myself before checking in online. I learned to pray with my heart, not just my eyes fixed on sacred text. Turning off a phone isn't hard. What's hard is facing the voice inside when there's no noise left to drown it out. But in that silence, I began to hear the first whisper again, the one from the one who had once asked me, have you truly lived? And if you think the story ends with me being reborn, you're wrong. What comes next is the greatest gift God gave me, and perhaps it is meant for you too. A sentence, a message, a gentle command powerful enough to shake an entire life. I used to think a miracle was coming back to life after death, but it's not. The real miracle is having the courage to live truly after your soul has been dead for far too long. 1 week after I returned from the brink, while sitting in silence during meditation, I felt that light again. It wasn't blinding. It wasn't intense. It was just a soft warmth that moved through my chest, down my arms, and into my heart. And then I heard that voice again, not as a sound, but as a vibration deep in every cell of my being. Emily, you may forget the dream, but do not forget this. I listened, and he said, do not let your soul be controlled by what must be charged with electricity, while you refuse to be charged by my light. That sentence pierced through time. It reminded me that I used to wake up to an alarm, feel joy over emoji reactions, feel distressed when no one viewed my story, feel anxious when the internet was down, yet feel nothing when I was disconnected from myself. You're probably holding your phone right now. You're staring at a screen, hearing this story. But ask yourself, when was the last time you sat in silence, without touching your phone? When was the last time you looked into the eyes of someone you love without thinking about unread notifications? When was the last time you prayed unhurried, unscattered, fully present? You don't need an accident to wake up. You just need one choice. And you can make it today. Turn off your phone for 1 hour. Place your hand over your heart. Close your eyes. And ask God, are you still there? I believe He will answer. Through light. Through silence. Through the unmistakable feeling of returning to yourself. I didn't share this story to make you fear technology. I shared it so you'd remember, there is a world that requires no Wi-Fi, yet is always connected. That's where He waits for you. No scrolling. No searching. Just presence. Are you truly living? Or are you just existing through every swipe of a screen? The answer is in the palm of your hand, the same place where your device rests each day, while your soul quietly waits to be powered on.